Hello everybody, my name is Kara, and today I'm here with the All About the Reading tag. This tag was created by Miriam from Between Lines in Life, and she was also the one who tagged me. I will be sure to link her original video down below. Question number 1 is, what do you look for most when you pick up a book? A. Beautiful writing style, B. A character-driven story, or C. A plot-driven story? For me, that is definitely B. I have a lot of flexibility as far as what plots I will like. Honestly, if I am invested in the characters and if I really care about them, it almost doesn't matter what the story is, you know? It's like, I think I will be interested no matter what the surrounding plot is. Number 2 is, what are your pet peeves in books? So besides the ones that everyone is kind of tired of, like love triangles and all of that, I have a couple of big ones. One of them is when the characters stop in the middle of like a really intense, life-threatening situation to like declare their love for each other or make out, or sometimes they even have sex, and I'm just like, you guys, the whole planet is in danger. Like, now is not the time for your relationship drama. Like, move on. And then another one that has really started to bother me recently is like the weird fixation on how characters smell. And it gets really noticeable in stories where like they've been trekking through the wilderness for a few months at this point, but you know that the love interest is still going to smell like pine trees and cool wind and like the smell of a clean man or whatever. And I'm like, girl, I don't care how hot this guy is. If he's been walking around for months in the wilderness with no shower, he's gonna sweat and he's not gonna smell good. Like, that's not hot. And I'm not saying that we need to be like super realistic about exactly how like unsanitary everyone would be after all of that, but just don't bring it up, because it just really takes me out of the story, because I'm sitting there like, really? Really? He smells like sunshine and roses and daisies? Like, I don't think so. Doesn't matter if the characters are male or female or whatever, or even what gender the author is, it happens across the board, and I'm a little sick of it. Question number 3 is, if you could print one quote on your wall, which one would it be? And I have a couple. One of them is from The Princess Bride by William Goldman, and it's the one that says, her heart was a secret garden and the walls were very high. And then the other one is, I still believe in spite of everything that people are really good at heart. And that was said by Anne Frank. It's a book that I think about a lot, and I think Anne Frank is just such an incredible person, and the fact that she could keep such hope and such faith in the beauty of the world after all that she went through is just so incredible to me, and that's a kind of hope that I would like to emulate. Number 4 is, which genre would you like to explore more? And I'm pretty good, I think, about reading widely. I'm going to say nonfiction, because even though I've gotten a lot more interested in it recently, because I've started realizing that all nonfiction is obviously not the same, and it actually just depends on which areas you're interested in. So which seems really obvious, but I just really want to get better about picking it up more frequently, because kind of as it is now, I have to remind myself that I like it. Number 5, was there ever a movie adaptation you liked better than the book? The only one I can really think of right now is Holes. I think the author was Louis Sachar, but it's been so long since I read that book that I might have changed my mind on it. I just remember when I read it in elementary school, I really didn't like it, and then I saw the movie a couple years later and I love it. Number 6, if one of your favorite books would be adapted or get a new adaptation, which book would it be and which role would you like to play? And one of the ones that would just be so exciting for me would be The Queen of Atolia by Megan Whalen Turner. I talked about this book in a recent recommendations video, which I will link down below in case you guys haven't seen it yet, but I love this book so much. I love the character of the Queen of Atolia. I'm an actor. I don't know if I have talked about that recently on this channel, but it's the kind of role that I love playing, and I've always wanted to play like this particular kind of character, because she's so interesting and so complex and so just fierce and intelligent, and oh, I don't know, I love her so much. And honestly, just all I want from life is to be a queen that everyone loves against their better judgment. I mean, is that so much to ask? So hit me up, movie studios. Number 7, a hyped book you wouldn't recommend at all. I'm gonna go with Falling Kingdoms by Morgan Rhodes. I read this book a couple years ago, maybe, and I was just sort of getting into BookTube. There was like no world building really. It was like the most basic like 3 kingdom setup ever, and I hated the characters too. They were so just like flat and frustrating, and I don't know. I think I wouldn't have had such a strong like reaction to that book if it hadn't been so hyped up, which is kind of the problem with overhype. Number 8, a book that highly influenced your life and way of thinking. I like the caveat of highly because, you know, I feel like as readers, as people who love books, a lot of them are going to kind of influence you in some way. So I went with one that definitely is one of the strongest influences in my life, and that is, once again, The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. I got this as a gift when I was like 8 or 9 years old, and this was one of the first books that I remember just rereading over and over again and getting completely sucked in by. And I really think that this book was an important influence for me because it showed me early on that people are capable of change, and that it doesn't matter if you're young or if you're, I don't know, not used to stepping up. It's like anybody can decide to kind of make the world a better place in small ways or in big ways. But with all of that, the book never felt like it was beating you over the head with a big moral or a message. And I loved how magical and beautiful this book was. And another thing that I think was really important is that it was a classic novel. And like, because I started reading this book so young, I never grew up with that kind of fear of classic books, you know? And I think that's really important because in my reading life now, a huge aspect of it that is really important to me is that there are good and bad books in every kind of range or genre or style, and also that you shouldn't be afraid to pick up a book from any kind of style. You know, I'm a big fan of classics, I'm a big fan of YA and middle grade and adult and everything, so I think that this book was an important starting point for that. And I also just love the feeling I get after reading this book that like there is magic in the world, you know, there are good things and there are good people, and things get bad for a while. I mean, this book definitely has some bad and upsetting things happen, so it doesn't really sugarcoat it, but it's like things can turn out okay even when you think they won't. Number 9, are you a fan of rereading books, and do you do it often? Yes, I am a huge fan of it. I'm actually doing the BookTuber Rereadathon challenge this year, and that has been really, really fun and interesting. But even before that, or outside of that, I am a huge fan of reading books over again. And actually, if I finish a book and I enjoy it, but I don't think I would ever be interested in reading it again, I usually won't even keep it. I think it's so important to reread books. I think you get different perspectives on them as you change, and just as you expose yourself to the same story again, it's never going to feel quite the same. Plus there's just like the pleasurable aspect of it is like, you know, you love a book and you know you love it, so you read it again and you get to kind of experience it again. Number 10, which book title could easily be the title of your life? I actually had a really difficult time with this one, but I finally settled on Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. And in Jane Austen's time, sensibility was what we would kind of call emotions, or it was sort of the opposite of sense or like reason. And I picked this book because I feel like a big part of my life or personality is kind of going between like, okay, like logical, just calm down and just think about it and just you'll get through it, and like, oh my gosh, emotions, like feelings. I have a lot of feelings. And I actually think that one of the reasons I dislike Marianne so strongly is that I feel like I'm kind of similar to her in some ways. I guess what I'm trying to say is I can never really make up my mind which of these describes me better. So, although I guess that's true of most people, it's like almost every person, you can't just pigeonhole them into one like personality trait or like descriptor, but I don't know, that's something I'm always really aware of when I read this book too, is like that kind of trying to find that balance. I don't know if that made any sense. Like I said, I had trouble with that question. And finally, number 11 is which book should be required reading for everyone? So I feel like this question can be sort of hard to answer because even if it's a book that I love and, you know, recommend and just am so passionate about, might not speak to somebody else the same way. So instead I kind of took this question literally, and this is a book that I honestly feel everybody should read at least once. They should even assign it in schools all over the world. And that is The Diary of Anne Frank, which was of course written by Anne Frank. This, for very obvious reasons, it is such an incredibly upsetting and powerful book, but I think it is so important to read. People always say, oh, this is important because we don't want history to repeat itself. But it's true. That really is one of the reasons why it's so important to keep remembering these things and to keep learning about these things, especially moving forward into a time where people who lived during this time and who experienced these things are starting to die, you know, like we're not having as many people who were witnesses to this kind of atrocity. So I think it is just so important that we continue to remind ourselves, especially in the current day and age with some of the things that are happening now in the world. We actually did not have this book assigned in school, and I just happened to buy it at a bookstore one summer and read it myself because I figured like it's probably important that I read it. And it is. I am really glad I read it. Like I said, it's really upsetting, but I don't think that we should avoid reading about the Holocaust or about similar times in history just because it's upsetting to us. But I want to take this opportunity to encourage everyone who has not read this yet to read it, because it matters, and because I think that reading this kind of thing is essential for our empathy and for our making sure this never happens again. Okay everybody, so that was the All About the Reading book tag. Thank you again Miriam for tagging me. I will tag a couple of people in the description, so be sure to check that. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you love the next book you read. Bye!